Recording in progress.
I call the regular meeting of the City of Ashland Planning Commission to order for May 12th, 2026. I will note that our meetings are available on Zoom and RVTV. The public can find information on how to participate in Planning Commission meetings in our public notices, as well as directions on how to find the full meeting materials, applications, and staff reports. I note that we have 5 planning commissioners here today, so we do have a quorum. Staff announcements, Brandon.
Thank you, Chair Werner. To start with, I'd like to introduce Carmel Stout-Zaran. She's our our Assistant City Attorney. And we've met with the Attorney's Office, and they expressed an interest in following the Planning Commission's regular meetings. And so she's here in that regard. It just so happens that we're also at a meeting in which an interpretation is being presented before you. But so she's here as a resource for us, and also for her to follow planning actions that may ultimately go before council. I also wanted to announce that Aura is hosting Greg Coulter, who is an author on homelessness and housing resources, and he will be presenting tomorrow at Southern Oregon University at 11 o'clock, and I believe at 6:30. We sent out an announcement to the Planning Commission previously, and I know they still have seats. So if you're interested in going, please register. And lastly, I wanted to note that 231 Granite Street, an application for a house that included a variance to driveway grade, has been reviewed by LUBA, and LUBA decided that the decision of the city to approve a variance was not supported by the code, and as such has remanded to the city based on a driveway grade in excess of 18% not being stipulated within our code, as well as some other design considerations for terracing on steep slopes. My understanding is the applicant is reviewing their design for the project and has not, as of my last speaking with them, made a determination on how they'd like to proceed with either the remand or a new application. So those are my announcements.
So coming up soon, okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Does that mean that it could potentially come back before the planning commission? Potentially?
Yes.
So don't talk to them.
In one fashion or another.
Okay. Consent agenda. We have an approval of April 14th, 2026 regular meeting minutes. Anybody want to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Public forum. Well, given the wealth of people in the audience, I think we'll skip this one. Type 1 public hearing. We don't have anybody for this either. This is a request for a code interpretation of a section of the land use ordinance for parking lot use on privately owned land. It is a request for a, quote, similar use, unquote, interpretation as provided by AMC 18.1.5 with regard to the distinction between private parking and public parking as a regulated use. The action is using a type 3 process for a public hearing for PA-T1-2026-00297, and staff is asking the Planning Commission to make a recommendation to the City Council. And
Chair, can I have a quick question? I don't see they're here.
No.
Should we make an attempt to reach out and see if they plan on showing up and take a possible little recess, or just
or
go forward?
defer this
Or-
to the
yeah.
next.
We could try and reach out to them, but again, I don't know if it'd be a slight recess at this point if they're unaware or not prepared to provide comment. If the committee wanted to have the applicant present, we could potentially delay the action until May 26th, come back before you and give them ample notice to attend.
I think that's a better way to do it. I agree with you that they should be here. Okay, so forget what I just said.
I was wondering, is there a phone number we could call just to see if they're running late? And then, or you think just
I don't-
defer to the following regular meeting?
So it looks like Aaron reached out to them and let them know that there will be a meeting tonight.
Could you turn your mic on?
Yeah, Aaron Anderson reached out on April 14th, letting them know that there would be, that would be on the agenda for tonight.
What is this green?
I don't know.
I don't know.
That was on,
You got a green too.
There you go.
Okay, well, I think it's of consequence. Well, at least to us. What does the commission want to do? Do you want to defer it till our next meeting, May 26th, and try again to notify them?
I would prefer to, but I'm flexible.
Chair, is there a requirement that they be here?
No,
No, there's no requirement.
no.
So they may have voluntarily chose not to make a statement, and that's within their prerogative.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think,
You will be going to the city council for the final decision you'd be recommending to the council. So there would be another bite at the apple for them to get their,
Opportunity for them to speak their piece.
yeah.
Well, I guess I would, since we're having a public hearing, I would like them to speak or make some sort of presentation to us about why they're pushing this now, especially since I understand they've tried this before and haven't gone all the way with pushing it. So well, let me take a poll. Eric, you think you're okay with postponing this?
I would be okay with postponing it and giving them the opportunity to show up again if they don't.
then we roll through.
Jay, what about you?
The meeting's been noticed, both with signs on property and apparently a month ago by direct outreach, so I would feel better about proceeding.
John, what about you?
I agree with Jay.
Okay. Yes,
I think we should proceed.
okay. So let's proceed. Okay, so back on the record. Keep what I just said. The site in particular is at 40 North Main Street. The owner is Pacific Rental Properties, LLC. The applicant is Lanier Land Consulting, LLC. Comprehensive plan is downtown. Zoning is C1D for downtown commercial. The map is 391E09BB and tax lot 10,100. Let's do site visit and ex parte contact. Commissioner Herron?
I have done a site visit. I have not had any ex parte.
Conversation.
Okay. Linenger?
No ex parte conversation. I have used the parking area at 40 North Main countless times in the last 35 years.
Okay. Commissioner Moore?
Yeah, I've made a site visit, but no ex parte.
Okay. Commissioner Phillips?
Site visit, no ex parte.
And I also have done a site visit and no ex parte. So I will open the public hearing. Staff, you want to make a presentation?
Thank you, Chair Werner. So this application before you is a request for a similar use interpretation under Ashland Municipal Code 18.1.5 regarding a distinction between public parking and private parking under the Ashland Municipal Land Use Ordinance. The request stems from a proposal to convert the existing parking lot at 40 North Mountain Street into a privately operated fee-based parking facility, which the applicant states would be open to the general public. Under 18.1.5050, interpretation requests are normally processed administratively by the staff advisor reviewing the proposal and determining whether it is a use that's similar to something already expressly authorized within the ordinance. However, that section of code also authorizes staff to refer an interpretation directly to the Planning Commission and City Council for legislative review when broader policy constraints are implicated, and I'll go over those in a moment. So in exercising the authority to come before this body, it was my determination that this has significant citywide implications. Although the applicant is focused on 40 North Main Street, this would apply broadly across residential, commercial employment, and industrial zones throughout the city. And therefore, the matter is being processed through a Type 3 legislative procedure, although the applicant submitted as a Type 1 and paid a Type 1 planning application fee. And this then allows the Planning Commission to review this and make a recommendation to the City Council as the final decision maker. So, I would note that the applicant's materials provided outline their arguments in terms of why the parking lot open to the public should be considered public parking. I would note that staff doesn't agree with that interpretation, that the central issue is not whether the public may access a property or the lot, but rather who owns, controls, and operates the facility. Staff's interpretation is that public parking refers to parking facilities that are owned, operated, or controlled by a government entity such as the City of Ashland or the State of Oregon. Southern Oregon University comes to mind. And so as such, they function as part of a public parking system. A privately owned lot operated for commercial gain remains a private commercial parking use, even if members of the public may pay to park there. So in making the evaluation and preparing the staff report, we did look at how the Ashland land use distinguishes between public parking and private parking. Public parking is listed as a outright permitted use in all zones throughout the city. Again, it's my expectation that that was in recognition that it would be a city or governmental undertaking to install a parking lot for public use. Private parking is permitted as accessory parking serving another permitted primary use. As this commission is familiar, in the case of our recent modification to eliminate parking mandates citywide, now there are a number of existing private parking lots associated with commercial and residential uses throughout the city that are no longer required public parking. However, we still have code that establishes the maximum permitted parking allowance dependent on use, which again correlates the parking lot with the associated residential or commercial development on site. I would note that the code does not expressly permit standalone private commercial parking facilities as a primary use. And staff's concerned that adopting and accepting the applicant's interpretation would effectively create a new land use category citywide without a legislative adoption process and without including standards or limitations for such a use. So under that interpretation, from the applicant, privately operated commercial parking lots could potentially be permitted throughout Ashland in any zone simply by being made open to the public. So specifically in relation to the downtown, staff did some research in terms of the 1988 downtown plan and going back even further to when parking was eliminated from the code for the downtown area. And there was discussion as far back as 1967, which indicated that the city sought to avoid the proliferation of surface level surface parking lots in the downtown core because they both undermine the pedestrian orientation of development, limit redevelopment potential, and as such would negatively impact downtown vitality. The downtown plan specifically identified concerns regarding large paved parking areas and fee-based parking lots as detracting from the historic and pedestrian character of the downtown. Ashland's code structure also reflects that policy direction by allowing publicly managed parking facilities anywhere as a permitted use while limiting private parking to accessory functions, and having had calculated that maximum parking allowance, as I noted from the recent change. So staff believes the existing framework has supported Ashland's goals for both commercial and mixed-use development, provides opportunities for consolidated parking through a public parking program, as was done with the Harding parking lot. And I would note that the code reference I made before, 18.15, has section 030 that specifically requires that any interpretation by staff, or in this case, the Planning Commission and Council, be informed and with the opinion of the city attorney. And so thank you to Carmel and her office for providing that. We embedded it into the staff report that was presented to you in written materials in advance of this meeting. So they reviewed both the applicant's interpretation and staff's initial interpretation from the Community Development Department, and concurred with staff's interpretation and concluded that ownership and operational control are the legally significant factors in distinguishing between public and private parking. It further notes that Oregon law distinguishes between publicly operated parking systems and privately controlled parking facilities, even where the public may have access to the facility for a fee. So ultimately, the city attorney concluded that the proposed use remains a private commercial parking facility, and I would note that that use is not permitted as public parking under the code, nor as a permitted use within the downtown. So essentially, based on that evaluation of the code structure, comprehensive plan policies, and the downtown plan, as well as the opinion of the city attorney, staff concluded that the proposal would be a privately owned fee-based commercial parking facility, and has made a recommendation to the Planning Commission. And I handed out a draft recommended motion, essentially that would conclude that public parking does not qualify as that the proposed use does not qualify as a similar use to public parking, and is thus not permitted under the Ashland Land Use Ordinance. So with that, I could take any questions that you may have, or if you have any questions for anybody up at the dais.
John?
After you, Chair.
No, go ahead.
So presumably the Chase lot, the Elks Lodge lot, and the Ashland Springs Hotel lot are all examples of private parking lots in the city. Is that right?
They are.
Okay.
And actually, you bring up an interesting point in terms of the Elks parking lot, that in the past, the city had leased the Elks parking lot to use as public parking. And so we, very early in this discussion with the applicant, noted that distinction between a public parking lot and private, and noted that if it was a lease agreement with the city to maintain a privately owned parking lot under city lease and jurisdiction, that could qualify as public parking. So Elks did that. When that lease expired, it reverted to private parking for members only. But all the other parking lots that you noted within the downtown, as well as US Bank, and there's others that are all private parking lots associated with the adjoining use.
So just one follow-up. So whether or not they charge is kind of irrelevant, right? Because they're private, so it's their prerogative because it's only for their occupants, tenants, customers.
Right.
Right.
Yes, I don't think that the fee for service is really the pertinent issue that we're addressing. And I would note that unbundling parking from the commercial space does afford a property owner the ability to have lease agreements with all of their tenants that have an apportionment for parking for their use as well. And that's not an uncommon strategy, both in residential and commercial.
Anybody else? Jay, go ahead.
Thank you.
So I found once you let go, it stops blinking and switches to red.
Okay.
Maybe not.
Okay, here we go. The private parking lots downtown that were just discussed, those are all accessory to the businesses that they're associated with. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is correct.
Would the applicant's proposal maintain an accessory relationship of the lot at 40 North Main to the mall and the hair salon that are?
So I think the distinguishing factor on this application is their intent was to effectively sever the relationship between the Claycomb Mall and the parking lot and have the parking lot be a standalone commercial facility operating. They are all on the same tax lot. You know, the city doesn't regulate how those spaces are used amongst the tenants. So I don't know how to directly answer your question. We do see it as ancillary parking to support Claycomb Mall. The property owner, however, can, you know, distribute those parking spaces amongst those tenants or amongst the customers of those tenants as they see fit.
And who enforces parking use on that lot now? Is it the city or is it the?
No, it's the owner enforces all parking regulations on that lot, as is true with the other lots that were brought up in the downtown, like Wells Fargo or the Elks Building. Those are all privately enforced.
Mhm. And so regardless of how we interpret the portion of code that's subject to this application, that would continue. Is that right?
Correct. If the Planning Commission made an interpretation that it is use similar to public parking, but privately owned and operated, the city would not then be responsible nor have the authorization to enforce parking on that lot. That would be privately enforced.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Werner, and thanks, Brandon, for the presentation. I guess a quick question here in terms of our recommendation to the City Council. In my eyes, it's clear that, you know, that public parking is, you know, something that the government provides, in this case, the city of Ashland, and that's the only thing that the code supports that can be charged for parking. Private parking is something that people own, and they can't charge for parking in the city of Ashland. And if we want that to happen, we have to create a new land use category. Is it possible that, along with the recommendation to City Council, that we could ask them to investigate if there is the you know, if they would be interested in changing that, and that would be something that council could look at?
Yes, I think that was noted in the staff report that if the commission felt that commercial private parking facilities should be permitted or a conditional use or have citing standards, that it's staff's assessment that would take a legislative amendment to embed that in our land use code, in which case, if the planning commission wanted the city council to consider that, you could incorporate that as to part of your recommendation.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah, I would like to jump on Russell's comments there. Our interpretation, Brandon, I heard you say part of the staff's opinion goes back to mid 80s when we were trying to limit or restrict surface parking. As a developer and looking at downtown, our interpretation for fee-based private, could we also limit it just to a surface parking lot? For example, if someone wanted to build a structure, a hotel, have subsurface, surface, and then possibly a first floor parking, they need to have a way to recover their investment. It would remove cars off the street. Cities do it all the time. They're hidden pretty well. You can't even tell they're parking garages underneath. So in our interpretation, can we somehow limit our opinion to surface parking based upon downtown, based upon our interpretation of the 1980s recommendation or guidance? To hopefully encourage, if a development like that happened, I know there's been grocery stores look at other properties downtown that we're going to do subsurface parking, and for a fee makes sense, because I mean you could charge the customers, you could charge other customers in the neighborhood. You'd want to encourage bike riding and walking, and that would help.
Yeah, I do caution that may go beyond an interpretation of the question of whether a commercial fee-based parking lot owned privately is a similar use to public parking, because at that point you're creating standards by in which scenarios it would be similar and which it would not. I'd like to open that up to the people to my left, if either of you have any concerns, sir.
Yeah, and I just want to offer a little bit our office's perspective in this and approach, which is one of statutory interpretation. Comes up a lot of time. It's common in the legal field, as you can imagine. So just a little bit of some background is you look at the plain reading of the ordinance, of the statute. If that is ambiguous, you look at that language within the broader context. And then a third kind of bigger prong is then you can look within a larger legislative context. For example, what was the legislative history, like to the extent that can be answered. If there was a clear intent, what was it? You can also look for the same situation in similar context. So to start with, though, it is pretty narrow. And that was kind of our office's approach in looking at this. And in looking at that, you can also look at what's mentioned and what's specifically not mentioned. And the fact that there was such a distinction between public parking being spelled out and private not seemed pretty kind of clear statutory interpretation. And then also looking at the broader context, at least at this stage, showed our office's perspective, showed that kind of legislative intent that it have the restrictions Brandon's talked about. And so if there is a policy change, I think that could be in a different bucket, if that's helpful.
May I ask a question, Chair?
Please do.
So just by way of my earlier question, so if the Ashland Springs Hotel began to charge, say, for event parking, they currently charge, let's just say they charge hotel tenants a small fee in addition to their room charge for parking, they would be in violation. Is that correct?
Yeah, over the years, we have had a number of businesses, not that one specifically, that have requested to utilize parking spaces as a commercial parking lot. Typically, the response has been that a commercial parking lot is not permissible within our code, and as such, you can't do it.
Great, thank you, Brandon. I just want to clarify. I'm good, thank you. Chair.
So we have before us a new thing for the planning commission, and that's a written out recommended motion by staff. This is pursuant to something that we discussed a couple weeks ago. in our meeting that staff was going to do what they do for council, which is provide a draft motion as a starting point for us, which I think is meant to be helpful and good idea. So that's in front of you as well, and I'm jumping ahead. I need to close the public hearing. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing because, okay, so we're into deliberations and discussion, which we've had a lot of already. Anybody want to make a motion or attempt to make a motion or attempt to use the motion in front of us? Go for it.
Chair Werner, if I could just, real quick before a motion gets made, I agree with staff's recommendation here. I think that we should also recommend City Council take a look at this and see if there's interest in changing or adding a new land use category for private parking that could be charged for downtown, and maybe with some suggestions that Eric also had about the types of parking that we would look at downtown that might maintain some of the qualities that we enjoy down there, while also trying to improve the quality of putting cars in places where they belong, which is maybe in a parking lot underground. I don't know, but I think that this is a good time for us to investigate this while it's on the table.
Yeah, I would like to narrow what I think you're saying, and so what I object to is having language that would allow a independent parking lot that doesn't matter whether it charges fees or not, but it's independent of a business. It's not associated with a use that's next door or across the street. And I don't want us to be allowing that in every zone in the city, which which we would be doing if we recommend to council, well, let me not say that, which we need to be careful not to do, I think.
I think there's two things here. There's the recommendation that we uphold the code interpretation, and then also a second recommendation that council investigates paid for parking.
Or private parking.
Private parking.
Yeah, as an independent use.
As a new land use category in the
Yeah.
city of Ashland.
Okay. And a subset of that is going to be whether, well, they'll probably bounce it back to us, but a subset of that would be looking at where and when and
Yeah,
how much and
I mean,
and all
right
that
now,
stuff.
I just think it needs more conversation perhaps. And, maybe it goes nowhere. Maybe we just say we like it the way that it is. But I think it's interesting that it's come across our desk, and, I'd like to know what council thinks about it.
Yeah, I'd agree with Russell. I think there's an opportunity, we talk about downtowns dying and less people are down there, and a lot of it might be because parking's so difficult and there's no space. So I'd be in favor for city council at least taking a look at for lack of a better word, mixed use building or facility that would encompass a commercial building, but some parking associated with it that on certain times could be leased out to the customers or the tenants or the public. But I think that, I think it is a bigger discussion that city council should weigh into. And until this has come up, they might not even know it doesn't exist, the issue doesn't exist,
So just playing devil's advocate with you for a moment, my understanding is that somebody could do what the idea, somebody could build a building now in downtown and put a parking lot next to it that would be associated with the building for tenants, and the public. Is that true?
But not for fee.
Yeah, they could charge a fee for it.
Oh, they can?
I think so. That's my understanding.
Yeah, I think that through lease agreements, they could charge in a lease, but what you're referring to is on a per parking
Like
basis,
meters.
like a metered parking. We would see that as a commercial parking lot that is not permitted in our code as it stands.
Okay, even though it came in, that the parking lot was built in association with the building, the new building next door, that,
And that is the case that we're looking at 40 North
right.
Main
right.
now. So again, staff's interpretation is that that would no longer be a private parking lot. It would be changing in use to a commercial fee-based parking facility. If it was,
Disassociated with
yeah,
the building next door, the mall, or whatever's next door. Okay. Okay.
Just one point of clarification. Thank you, Chair. So technically, the city could, if it wanted to, and it was approved by the neighborhood, build a 4-story parking structure where the ice skating rink is today. Because it's if it was on city-owned land, which I believe it is, and charge for it, because that's still public parking, right?
correct. And
Yeah.
that's
So
essentially.
it doesn't
what that-
eliminate the possibility of there being, it just have to be municipal, right? And I think, Eric, you're saying we should open up that opportunity to developers as well.
But it couldn't be 4 stories because it's residentially zoned.
Fair enough. I was gonna say 10.
Okay, anybody else have any questions, ideas?
I think that all these ideas that have been floated tonight are really good. And thanks to the commissioners for, framing them as possibly a separate recommendation. I'd be inclined to support that as well. But as for the initial recommendation, I think we're asked to simply decide whether this is a private or public parking lot as is. And on that narrow question, I'm prepared to decide. I agree with staff's analysis about it. So
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion. I make a motion that the planning commission recommend that the city council deny the requested similar use interpretation and affirm that privately owned fee-based commercial parking facilities are not public parking as contemplated by the Ashland Land Use Ordinance, do not qualify as similar use, and are not permitted as primary use under the Ashland Land Use Ordinance.
Is there a second?
second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the motion that staff has put in front of us. Can I ask, part of discussion is that, are you going to make a second motion?
Like an addendum to my initial motion?
No, I was thinking a second motion to ask council to look at,
I mean, I
New
don't
parking
personally
area.
feel that that's necessary at this moment. If somebody wants to amend my motion, I would be happy to support that, but I don't feel it's necessary at this time personally.
okay. If somebody wanted to get that idea to council, they could do a separate motion.
I think it's the clean way of doing it. I think we should pass this motion and then figure out whatever else we want to do on the backside of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Michael, could you call the roll?
Commissioner Herron,
Yes.
Commissioner Leininger,
Yes.
Commissioner Marr,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Chair Werner.
Yes. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you very much. And are there any additional motions to be had at this point?
Thank you, Chair Berner. Staff, if I was to make a motion that to city council to investigate the possibility of creating a new land use category. Is this a good time to do that?
I think tonight's meeting is an opportune time to bring that forward. This, your past decision or recommendation will be going to council on June 16th. And so we could incorporate into the council communication that independent of planning action, PAT 1 2026-00297, the commission had the following recommendation, and provide that to them at that meeting.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brandon. And if I may, Chair Werner,
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend that city council investigate allowing private paid parking in the city of Ashland and potentially creating a new land use category for that. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Eric, potentially?
It could be surface or non-surface based, i.e. in a building envelope. I would want to give city council something to be creative with and not just like, oh, what are they asking for? So, I can make an amendment to it.
Okay.
Go for
I'll
it.
second.
Okay. Moved and seconded.
And I would like to make an amendment to Commissioner Phillips' motion that city council look at a wider, more broad interpretation of fee for service that would include a full development that could be subsurface, surface combined with a second or third floor underneath a mixed-use building.
I'll second that amendment.
Okay. So we vote on the amendment first. Are we ready to vote? Okay. Michael, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Herron,
Yes.
Commissioner Leininger,
Yes.
Commissioner Marr,
Sure.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Chair Werner.
Yes. Okay, so the amendment passes, and now the motion reads, City Council to investigate private paid parking and creating, with the idea of possibly creating a new land use category, and council should look at a wider fee for service, including subsurface and above ground and first floor, second floor, portions of buildings. Is that,
I think that's good. I would add, if I need to make an amendment, that this would be a primary use.
as a primary use?
Yes.
So creating a new land use category as a primary use. Okay. The motion's been moved and seconded. Motion as amended has been moved and seconded. Michael, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Herron,
Yes.
Commissioner Leininger,
Yes.
Commissioner Marr,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Chair Werner.
Yes. Great, okay, thank you, everybody. So, is there any open discussion?
I have a question. Is it fair to assume, Chair, sorry,
Sure, go for it.
that this is just going to come right back to us for an opinion?
Probably.
Okay.
I mean, if I were counsel, that's what I'd do, but
Okay, I just want to clarify.
They're
that
independent.
this is going to come straight back to us.
to do some research on and some crafting of language and
Okay.
that kind of stuff.
Gives us some time to think about it.
Yeah. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second? Moved and seconded, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Well, not quite 7:30, but close. Yeah.